but we focus quite a bit on the components that make the front half of the tractor. Might be time to turn our attention to the rear part here, the transmission, the final drives. We're going to pull the final drives off the transmission, and of course we'll take all the drawbar hardware off before we do that. I think before we do anything, I think we owe it to ourselves to get a little cleaner in terms of work area. So I'm going to go ahead and start to manually scrape off the heavies. Once I've got that done, I'll take it out and we'll use the pressure washer to clean up the rest as good as we can. And then there'll always be some fine detail work once we get to working on it. But for starters, let's get a little cleaner before we start to dig in. And look at that. Clean, fresh, sanitary. I'd say ready for paint and then to go back into service. Before we jump that far ahead, I suppose we owe it to ourselves to dig into that transmission and see what things look like in there. The rest of this tractor, I'm learning, has been kind of worn and used, so there's no doubt there's going to need to be some refurbishing with that. One thing I noticed on my drawbar frame, these brackets, they've got original John Deere paint. They look like they're part of the tractor. That's not really original equipment to this model of tractor. I wonder if it had some kind of a snowplow or other undermount attachment associated with it. But next what we want to do is we're going to pull our drawbar framework, these brackets, these castings that hold our 3-point arms in place, finals, brake pedals, and then that will allow us to get access to everything we need to internally on the transmission and give it a little bit of an overhaul. Should be fun. The next thing we have to do to remove our final drives is to remove our brake pedals and our brake connections. The brakes in a standard and a utility tractor are contained within this final drive housing here. There's a little stud that drops down. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it underneath here, but it drops down right here. And there are a couple nuts that secure it up into the brake pedal. If memory serves, there's a 5/8 lock nut and then a special 3/4 inch domed nut that hold that pedal up and connect the brake pedal to the actuator that's up in the housing. It looks like on this side, I think the stud's been broken up in here, so that pedal's actually free. I can probably take this little bracket off over here, but we still have to deal with this one, which is still connected. After cleaning things up a bit, I think I have to correct myself. I think that is a 9/16 lock nut up underneath here, not a 5/8. So let's see. This one usually comes off fairly easy. There's our little nut. I know the next one ought to be a 3/4. And usually the brake pedal wants to drop as we're backing this one out, so it can be a bit of a challenge to that is our special dome head nut that kind of slides up into a groove in the bottom of that brake pedal. Now to pull the pedal, all we got to do is pop this little snap ring off in this washer and it should slide out. Each model of tractor, in this case a standard, use their own version of a pedal. And I see the problem I'm going to have here. I'm still binding on this stud that's dropping down. I can't slide out, so I'm going to have to raise my whole final drive transmission unit up to let this pedal drop further down where I can come up out of that stud. Go. On this side, we're going to pull this bolt out of here that ties this unit up into that other stud, which again, that one's broken, so it's not going to hold us back, but we can buzz him out. Now we'll go ahead and remove our second brake pedal. It's held on just to the shaft with the keyway. We'll loosen up this bolt and should be able to get him out. Next thing can be removing our final drives. With our drawbar framework and 3-point brackets removed, we can go ahead and move forward with removing our final drives. We've got the transmission set up here in a more workable area, chain hoist set up to make removing the final a little bit easier than doing it by hand. We're going to remove 3 15/16 nuts and 1 specialized 1-inch nut that acts as a holder for this brake lock mechanism. The final will move out laterally. There's a pinion that splines in with the differential assembly, the ring gear unit inside the transmission. The brake unit's also enclosed in the final, but it should come out when we pull the final out. So let's see if it goes as easy as that sounds. Okay, nuts off. It's important to remember this stud later, because this stud's actually a little longer than your standard stud and the location that it's in because of a bracket that mounts on the back of this tractor, so we'll keep that in mind for later. just to be safe. And there we go. You see our brake unit here, the brake discs, and there's an actuator that's actuated from below. All that looks lovely in there, so we'll save that for a future date to investigate all that stuff. But for now, one down, one to go. Here on our opposite side, our brake lock holding nut is proving to be a little bit more challenge for our open end wrench to remove. So I popped off the little snap ring, just removed the lock, and then we should be able to get either the box end of the wrench on there or a socket. Remove that guy. Brake mechanism holding us back a little bit. Got just the tool for this. There we go. Work smarter, not harder. Okay. Now we have the predicament of an imbalanced transmission. Just lay this guy down here a little bit. You should stay steady there. There we go. And here we are down to our transmission case and basically its contents. I think the next thing I'd like to do is drain the oil. I suppose that's a good idea first. And then pop off this back cover back here. That's going to allow me to get a look at the ring gear unit, probably the pinion as well. There's a bunch of gears and shafts inside this forward component. There's a pinion that ends here that meshes with the ring gear, which drives our finals. Sometimes those can be compromised, so I'm eager to see how they look. I think I'd also at some point like to set something up where I can spin our input shaft around and get a feel for how the gears mesh with one another, if there's any excessive noise. These gears in these transmissions are a straight cut gear. There's no synchronization. Basically, with enough time and wear against one another, you can have the result of a transmission with a whine or a growl to it, some noise. And that could be bad bearings or other things too. But if the gears are worn, you'll sometimes have that howl as you're moving around, which is kind of unpleasant to deal with. So if there's any of that, I'd like to get ahead of it and swap out the compromised parts with some good ones. I know you'll be shocked to hear that I've got a couple parts transmissions if I need to get to them for that purpose. One other thing I guess I can mention while we're looking at this tractor, you know, a lot of people wonder on these little Dubuque tractors, you know, how do you tell if the tractor has live power takeoff or not without getting on the inside and seeing all this stuff up here? An easy way to know is look at your lever that engages your power takeoff. If your lever to engage it flips backwards this way, what's happening is a coupling meshes with the cluster gear in the transmission, and then that will drive your power takeoff. It meshes with the power takeoff shaft. In this case, with a live power tractor, your lever flips forward. That engages a coupling forward, connects to a couple gears inside this front housing, and then when your disc is spinning your power takeoff shaft here, your PTO shaft is spinning in the back. So a quick, easy way of knowing from the outside without having to dig into the inside. There's one or two other ways, but that's the most obvious in case one was curious and you just didn't know otherwise. So yeah, I think we'll see about draining some oil here and taking a peek. Can't wait to see what's inside.